Hello everyone, DaveDev here. Welcome to today's video. In today's video, we're going to take a look at arrays in PHP, how to create them, access the information inside of them, and modify them. An array is basically a container of multiple data types stored as an association of keys and values. In PHP, the arrays can contain multiple data types at the same time. As you can see here, we are storing a string, an integer, and a boolean in the same array. There are three types of arrays that we can use. The first one is an index array, which is basically the default one on PHP. It is formed by numeric indexes as keys and the associated values. In order to access them, you just need to specify the element index inside of the array. As we can see in this example, we create an array of three elements, element 1, 2, and 3, and then we access the first element. The elements start from the index 0 onwards. So if we save this, we have the three elements. The first element is 0, the second element is 1, and the third element is 2. Another type of array in PHP is an associative array. This array is very similar to the index array, with the main difference of having string as keys instead of numbers. In other languages, this type of array would be called a map or a dictionary. As you can see in the example, we are storing an array with the first element of the array being key 1 and the value element 1, and the second element being key 2 and the value element 2. So we can see in the var dump, it's stored like that. And for accessing the elements, you just have to specify the key. In this example, we are accessing the first element with the key 1, and it returns the value, element 1. And the third type of array is called multidimensional array, which is basically an array formed of other arrays. This can be stored as a numeric or as an associative array. As you can see in this example, we are storing one array inside of another array. In this particular case, this is going to be stored as an index array. But if we wanted to do it as an associative array, we just have to specify the key for the array element inside of the original array. And for accessing is very simple. Each array element inside of the other is going to be accessed by the numbers in the brackets. So for example, in this case, we are accessing the first element of the first element. So meaning that the first element is an array, and then we are accessing the first element of the first array, which is going to return element. Okay, now we're going to take a look at some useful functions and methods for operating with arrays. One of the most useful ones is count, which basically returns the amount of elements stored in the array. As you can see, we specified an array of 2 elements, and the function will return 2, which is the amount of elements in the array. Another useful one is empty, which will return true or false depending if the array contains any elements or not. As you can see here, it is saying 1, which it's equivalent to true, and that means that the array is empty. If you would like the opposite, you would just specify the exclamation mark on top of it, and you will get a 0 or nothing because it can't cast it. The next one is to check if an element with a specific key exists in the array. This can be used for indexes arrays and associatives arrays, and it's very useful in the associative array because we are not sure all the time if an element with a particular key exists in the array. So for doing that, we just specify the isSet and then the element of the array that you want to check. And the function will return true or false if that element exists inside of the array. As you can see, we checked if the element 0 of the index array exists, which is correct because it only has one array and it's stored in the position 0. And for the associative array, we are checking if the array element with the key 1 exists, which in this case is true. Just for testing this, let's change to key 2. We would see it returns false or null. Another very useful method is array push, which will basically push an element at the end of the array. this method it's only valid for index arrays, because for associative arrays there are other methods to do those. As you can see, we started with an array of 2 elements, element 1 and element 2, and later on we add another element called element 3. And in here we are just printing the elements, and as you can see we have element 1, element 2 and element 3. Now the equivalent version for associative arrays, it's very simple. We just create the key, the array with the keys, and for the last element we just specify the key that we want to store it in the array, and then equal it to the value that we want to store, and that will push this key with this value at the end of the associative array. The key 1 is element 1, the key 2 is element 2, and then the new one is key 3 and element 3. Okay. Now let's get the opposite, which is removing elements from an array. Array pop will work with index and associative array types and will basically remove the last element of the array. So you can see here we have element 1, element 2 and element 3, and we use the array pop on the array, and this will return the element that is being removed from the array, and it will store it here. And as you can see, there's only element 1 and element 2. And stored in the return variable, is the element that it has been removed from the array. Okay, another similar one, it's array shift, which will remove an element, but instead of being on the last position of the array, it's going to be on the front position. So the very first element of the array is going to be removed. And this also works for index and associative arrays. So we have the 3 elements here, and then we do the array shift, and this as well will return the element that is being removed from the array. In this case, it's going to be the first element. As you can see, we have element 2 and element 3, and stored in the returned variable is the element 1 that has been removed from the array. Now the next one is adding an element at the very beginning of the array. Opposite to the array push, array on shift will add the element that you specify at the very beginning. Keep in mind that this only works for index arrays, and unfortunately there's no equivalent for associative arrays unless you combine multiple methods for doing that. So as we can see here, we have element 2 and element 3. And then we use array on shift and we add element 1 to it. We can see the element 1 is the very first element inside of the array. And the next one is merging. So in the case that you want to merge 2 arrays into one, you can use the array merge method here. This works with index and associative arrays, and it will create an array that has all the elements combined. You can see it has element 1, element 2, element 3, and element 4. Now, there are some default behaviors here in the case that some elements collide. For example, for associative arrays, in the first array and the second array, there are 2 elements with the same key. The later value is going to be taken. So that means that the second array is going to take over from the first array, and it is going to override the value of that element. Okay, now into sorting. In order to sort the elements inside of an array without creating new arrays, you can use the sort method. This is only valid for index arrays. So as you can see here, we have element 2 as the first element and element 1 as the second element. So if we test this, we can see that element 1 was moved to the first element and element 2 was moved to the second. And as you can see, this also works for strings. It can work for any kind of value. Now the equivalent for associative arrays is a sort, which is going to do the same. And as you can see here, we had the key 1 with the element 2, and then we have the key 2 with the element 1. And after sorting, it has the key 2 as the element 1 and the key 1 as the element 2. As you notice, it's only moving the elements, it doesn't change the keys. Now, let's say that you want to sort keys instead of values in an associative array. For doing that, you can use k-sort. As you can see, we have at the original array, we'll have the key 2 as the first and key 1 as the second. And the sorted one, it has key 1 as the first and key 2 as the second. And that's it for today's video. In the next video, we will take a look at logical operators, comparison operators, as well as if-else statements. Thank you for staying until the end, and please subscribe to the channel and give a like if you like the content. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions or suggestions. See you in the next one.